All right, so first up, we're going to be checking out PancreasNoWork, every Warhammer Fantasy Fact Sheet Explained. Last time around, we got through most of the Manish races, and now we're going to get into the elves and whatever else comes next, because there's really only a handful of races in 40... Sorry, common mistake. Age of Fantasy. I probably just triggered a lot of people. Justifiably, at that. That said, I do really enjoy the models from Age of Sigmar, but the lore for fantasy it's better. It like legitimately is better. Age of Sigmar might get there eventually, but fantasy just has an immediate, this is good. So we're going to jump right in and see where this goes, because elves are honestly probably one of my favorite fantasy races in general, and even when they're bad, I love them because they're horrible. So we're going to see where this goes, and I will probably fanboy a lot. Yeah. Also, no name. Hey, Airier, gotta recommend Borean Knights, The Psychology of Forbidden Cyrodiil. Ooh, it just released yesterday. 1 second, I will add that to the list. I'm going to have to put a lot of things in here, but this one, I will apologize. I might not make a reaction to that just because I might very well just watch that on my own time, because that sounds fascinating. So let's see where this goes.
We're going to start by clumping all the elves together, because their backstories are all very interconnected. Don't worry, they'll each get their own time to shine. Once upon a time, there were...
Oh, I have never seen this look of the fantasy world. Is this one of the other continents, or is this like before something broke? I think the thing in the middle is where like the best elf boy is keeping the chaos at bay, but I could be mistaken.
Just elves. The first species created by the old ones to fight chaos, they were made to be elves. Arrogant, long-lived, and short of the Slann, they're the best wizards around.
And that's where they also stole it from fantasy to redo it in 40k, because the Slann if the Slann were created by the old ones in this one, in 40k they just took out the Slann and had the old ones directly create the elves. Yeah, so that does hold true for both of them.
When chaos descended, the old ones pissed off, and the elves had no idea what the hell to do. Eventually, a cool elf named Kalidor made a magical vortex, the chief cool elf Airier grabbed a cursed sword that killed a whole lot of demons, and then everything cooled down a bit. Airier disappeared, but they elected a new king, so all was okay. His children with his first wife even showed back up to be a bloodline of legendary heroes, though they're also cursed because of that sword.
How bad was the curse? Also, I recognize Morathi. While she's a cool character in Age of Sigmar, early on, she is literally, like, she actually got better in AOS, where everything else got worse. Apparently going through primeval chaos and having the world end made her a slightly better person. I say slightly because the bar is that low. Yeah. Also, I'm being told that's, Ulthuan, the High Elf continent. Okay, so it is actually the continent. I just didn't know the location or size or shape of. And it's the Sword of Cain? Oh, that explains the curse part.
Airian's second wife told their son Malekith that he should be king, convinced him with her boobs because family trees can be shaped like Christmas wreaths if you don't mind being a freak, and a civil war broke out. Malekith...
Yeah, like I said, low bar for Morathi. I love her because she's a horrible character, and also her model is freaking amazing. And I'm just going to pull up your comment because this actually probably does relate to this. The continent is their version of Atlantis, Ulthuan. Also, that is where the name for one of the most famous craft worlds came from. And probably, in lore, the best craft world. I'm biased because the Farseer there, not Eldrad, actually I think it's Eldrad, is one of the coolest elves ever, who's like, I can see the future. Why does everyone keep shooting themselves in the dick? I'm not even giving them bad advice. Yeah, I don't just mean that for the few times he's actually dealt with 30k, where he was like, hey, you probably should look at this because chaos is going to fuck up your family. And every Primarch who listened to him was either an idiot, Dorn, or already corrupted. I think that was Fulgrim. Yeah, it's like, I got the right info. Oh, I went to the wrong person. He wasn't even trying to be a dick about it. That's the worst part. That came later, because he's still an elf. But he actually unironically was trying to be helpful in a non-dickish way. I mean, non-dickish for elf standards, and honestly, even the Imperium standards, but still just wrong person, man. Sees the future, doesn't see the present very well.
Walked into a sacred fire to prove his worth, whereupon their chief god lit him on fire. Him and his mother kept trying to take over the home continent of Ulthuan. They nearly unmade it when they realized they couldn't, and then the newly formed Dark Elves were forced off of it to go live in Canada. The High Elves, those who stayed...
Wait. The Dark Elves live in fantasy Canada? What are... Is he making a joke about Canada, maple syrup, or Canada war crime? Never mind, he said dark elves. I know exactly which way that joke is going.
Behind, once again got to rebuild the shattered remnants of their home. At least they still had their firm friendship with the Dwarfs, that's a good thing. Oh, wait, that got ruined too. But don't feel too bad, the High Elf King ruined that one for them himself by being the worst. That one wasn't an unfortunate tragedy, it was a self-imposed unfortunate tragedy. The Dwarfs and the High Elves fought Fantasy World War I, and it was pretty miserable for everyone involved. Picking a victor is sort of meaningless because both groups were pretty thoroughly wrecked by the event, and the High Elves had to return home when the Dark Elves began the first of many invasion attempts to retake Ulthuan. Some High Elves didn't go home and sheltered in a magical forest called Athel Loren.
Okay, I need to ask the obvious question here. Why do they have their mouth just magically, like, vine-bound? It's like everyone else, like, oh, yes, we're doing the armor on the head, but only slightly parts of it here and there. It's all the fantasy, and then random gag. Like, that doesn't look like the mask covering their face. That looks like they're gagged. I'm assuming the elves were into some freaky... Never mind, elves, probably Slanesh. Well, I thought that was more of a dark elf thing. So I'm just going to pull this up because it might be important. Such is the power of Nagash. Wait, what? Patrick Starr is shaking hands with an uncomfortable Mr. Krabs. The former labeled Omegaverse, the latter labeled Werewolf the Apocalypse, based on the study of captive wolves. I have read a comment. That is very much a comment. I have no idea where we're going with this one. I'm being told by Martin, nope, it's actually the North America of Malice. Oh, that would do it. And it is a mask? I'll take your word for it. That's what they also call it sometimes. Just because you see the future doesn't mean you are incapable of bias and ignoring the consequence of seeking your personal winnings future. Yeah, Tudor, that's very much the case. And almost every elf farseer does that. Eldred actually does kind of not fuck people over nearly as much, which actually makes it more sad that he actually is one of the people who led to the most fucked up outcomes because people didn't listen to him. And they made it worse for themselves because they're like, he's an elf. He's going to fuck us over. Because all the other ones do that. I mean, sure, he'll also do that. But when he's actually tried to help, he's actually tried to help everyone. He's literally the closest thing to a big good guy. I say closest because it's still 40K. But he's literally one of the best. And when he isn't actually being a dick, everyone assumes he's being a dick. So they make it worse. And oddly enough, his being nice has led to worse outcomes than other people being dicks. I think it's hilarious. I have a weirdly fucked up sense of humor, though, so that kind of makes sense. And I'm being told these aren't the freaky Slanesh elves. These are the old Fae Tales versions. Oh, that actually makes them kind of interesting.
Instead, now we have our third group of elves.
Still looks like a ball gag.
The Wood Elves are the easiest of the subgroups to explain. They sit in their magical forest and are insane. Sometimes people walk into the magical forest. It's safe to assume that unless stated otherwise, they do not come back out of the...
You know, everything he just said makes me think that might actually just be a gag so they don't eat someone. And I can't be told otherwise. I think it might be a thing now.
Magical forest. Sometimes even if you come out of the magical forest, you find that 1,000 years have passed since you entered, and every single one of those years catches up with you as you age to dust within minutes. Aside from that, though, your first instinct might be that these are stupid, uninspired, lame D&D Wood Elves who love...
Okay, not gonna lie, if this is what AOS Wood Elves look like, it makes me really upset that we never got the equivalent in 40K, because Exodites dressing like this would be really cool. Mostly because no one has normal clothing in 40K, and this would actually be the closest thing to normal ever. And also riding dinosaurs. Yeah, I said it before, and I'll say it again. Wood Elves in normal clothing riding dinosaurs sounds like the coolest thing ever.
Nature and harmony and trees. And in fairness, they do love all those things. It's just that these trees are 50 feet tall, mobile, have a craving for the suffering of mankind, and the Wood Elves will invite peasants to feasts to fatten them up for the forest spirits.
Yeah, and they became the Sylvaneth in AOS. And honestly, not much has changed. Really not much. If anything, I think the models got cooler. Again, I'm biased. I think AOS has some of the best models Games Workshop has ever produced. And I'm a fanboy for 40K models. I still think AOS has better ones.
They don't give a rat's ass about the outside world aside from how it might affect their perfect little lives inside the forest. There are a few scattered enclaves of them across the world that are a bit friendlier, but the general motivation of the Wood Elves is getting other people to get the hell off of their lawn. And when the lawn can come to life and devour you alive, it's a pretty easy task to do that. They also gaslight the Bretonnians into thinking their goddess is an elf one, although as it turns out later on, the extent of the elven gaslighting goes even further beyond their understanding.
What?
They're led by the avatars of two of the elf gods.
What does he mean it goes even further than their understanding? This is one of those things where if I knew more about fantasy, I would actually understand that. Granted, that also means that there's still more about fantasy I can learn, and so, neat. That's the fun. It's like finding out a bunch of random shit about 40k you didn't know before that actually matter. It wasn't just a random side battle. They're just like, and then everyone died and no one knew about it. Which is a lot of conflicts. Also, Necro. Riding dinosaurs sounds like Lost Belt 7 and FGO. Really? Oh, didn't know there were dinosaurs in that. I thought it was more Aztec. Which had dinosaurs. Yeah, okay, good point.
Odds, naturally the ones that are focused on nature, because Wood Elf. The king likes to rampage across Bretonnia every now and again for funsies, and the queen sometimes says don't do that, sometimes doesn't care, and sometimes encourages it when she's in a feisty mood. They're not my thing, truth be told, but I can respect the idea of wanting to be left alone for all eternity. So if you too cringe inside...
I mean, also, have you seen the other races in AOS fantasy? You got the orcs, the humans who fight amongst each other, and maybe did Acheron, not Acheron, sorry, wrong franchise, Archeon. Chaos, Skaven, more orcs, the Slan. You could basically say, oh god, no, fuck this. Nope. It's probably the right choice. I'm also going to pull this comment up. So, Ra, you mentioned, all the Ents are wood elves that sacrifice themselves to inhabit a tree, so Treebeard needed to capture a bunch of elves to sacrifice to make more in Lord of the Rings. Thankfully, the fantasy... Wait, Games Workshop also makes Lord of the Rings models. So maybe that's why there's no more Ents, and they just forgot that part of human sacrifice was needed. Although, functionally, it's literally the same thing in fantasy as what they did in 40k, but instead of having the Wraith constructs, they just made wood Wraith constructs. Functionally the same, but also completely different. Also, I'm basically being told by Terran, the goddess that posed the lady gaslighted not only Bretonians, but also the Wood Elves. How? Wouldn't she also be? Oh, she probably pretended to be someone else to them as well.
A little bit whenever you get a text message or a Discord DM, these guys might be for you. The High Elves are the ones that stayed on Ulthuan and remained much the same throughout.
Wait, this is how they look? Huh. You know, most fantasy factions changed massively if they made it into AOS. This one doesn't, like, look any different. This is the art style they had. I don't remember so many lions, but I can actually see someone just putting a square base on the AOS models and say, hey, here's my fantasy army. It looks pretty much the same. Also, Hammer, I'm just going to pull up your comment. When the trees are crazy and racist hillbillies. The trees are hillbillies. You know what? Now I have an idea of a Trent or an Ent with a giant banjo. This is kind of an epic idea, and I need a model of it.
And like I said, the old...
Also, I'm being told, no, she didn't. The wood elf god is Isha, not Lilith. Lilith. Martin, those are both words. I know Isha from 40k, but I'm not entirely sure what that would mean in fantasy.
Sure as hell made them to be elves. Long-lived, magical, arrogant, and because they live for thousands of years, they're real good at what they do. Some of their swordsmen have been practicing for so long that they take into account the weight of their eyelashes when they swing. You're not beating that. And sure enough, the history of the High Elves is the history of them sailing out from their homeland to go stop most of the problems the world faces. They taught humanity how to use magic properly, they keep excess magic from saturating the world, and they have a habit of showing up just as they're needed to stop things from getting completely out of hand. There's a High Elf who destroyed orc warbands that have been rampaging since the dawn of time, and was so good at it that he gave the entire elven race a reputation amongst the greenskins for being good fighters. All of this...
Really? Huh. That's actually really badass. Wonder who that one is.
This because a fat goblin burned down his house. And of course, Teclis, my beloved...
God damn! Really? Like, just one guy is like, you burned my house down. I heard about the fat goblin in the previous video, or I think earlier this one. And that's the one who actually ended up almost taking over the elves and nearly wiped them out. It was like the most successful one ever because he ate an ogre but then didn't die and explode from it. Huh. That wasn't a goblin. Yeah, I think it was just a goblin, not an orc. It was specifically a goblin that got huge.
Beloved, is there a 10,000 strong army of orcs, dark elves, or worse bearing down on you? Well, with a wave of his staff and a flick of his wrist, there is now a new crater. He's a real cool guy like that, and he's not even that arrogant. The flip side to balance this glazing session I've just done is that they do actually have weaknesses to go along with all that. They reproduce slowly, and in a wargame setting, that's the mark of death. Every death in battle is a hindrance, although at least compared to 40k, they aren't outright dying. They're on the watch list for being endangered rather than being endangered outright. And magic being so innate to them means that when something with it goes wrong, they feel it and are affected by it more acutely than most.
And a lot of things went wrong with magic, even before the end times. Also, the end times kind of suck and rewrite a lot of lore. Teclis got the worst rewrites. I actually don't know how Teclis was affected by the rewrites of the end times going to AOS, if only because I know he's in AOS, and that's literally the extent of my knowledge. I almost know nothing about him for there. And I'm just going to pull up Tudor's comments. Again, a lot of people in chat know quite a bit about this, so I'm looking at a lot of this for context. Lilies is the elf god of magic and the Lady of the Lake. Isha is Isha, but without being captured by Nurgle. Oh, that would do it. The difference between fantasy elves gods and 40k elf gods is the fantasy gods get to exist and do things. Yeah, although considering there was, at least in fantasy to 40k, a direct connection, I still wonder how much of that carries over to AOS, because people keep saying, oh, it's a completely different game now, except fantasy still plays into AOS. And I just think it would be funny if the reason a certain Grey Knight captain disappeared from 40k is because he got caught up in the movement from fantasy to AOS. Would that be incredibly stupid? Yes. I would love it though, because it would just be weird.
Like when their magical queen is sad. Their entire homeland's climate is tied to her emotions.
Really?
And like any living being that isn't a psychopath, she is sad when a great amount of her people die. So when Malekith decides today is as good a day as any to get 1 million people killed trying to retake his homeland again, it really sucks to live in the same country as her. They're also physically frail, which isn't the biggest weakness in the world, but you'll definitely notice it when an orc is bearing down on them.
Yeah.
They've also got a bit of a species-wide depression thing going on too. When you live functionally forever, you get a long time to get a real feel for what the world is like. And as it turns out, this world kinda sucks. They just don't have time to recuperate from any of their constant losses.
Yeah.
The world is in danger, the High Elves sail out to fix the issue, and then the world is immediately in danger again.
Yeah, because for every other race, it might feel like a lot of a time, but with their lifespan, that would literally feel like every day is, oh god, what the fuck. Yeah, that, honestly, only having depression would probably be an upside, because you would probably deserve a lot more than that. They'd be like, oh god, nope, just bring the end times, we're good.
Add on to that some more standard elven weaknesses, like their old age, meaning they don't always adapt to new things well, and you've got a race that has a bit of a deadline attached to it. Mankind is inventing guns, tanks, and more, and the elves think the bow and arrow remains the height of warfare.
It would be fascinating, though, if, elven rogue just decided to say, fuck this, did its thing as a kid before realizing elf, and just went full steampunk. Yeah, I'm very much talking about a very specific story being written online. If you know the name of it, that's good, because I'm, for some reason, pulling a blank. Also, you mentioned, Teclis is affected by the curse of Cain and got magical tuberculosis. Also, end times turn him from a good guy to I will get my dad killed to make sure Malekith becomes king and incompetent. Oh, they just decided to fuck with his lore. I mean, I know the end times was pretty rushed because they just wanted to kill off fantasy. But seriously, I can see why a lot of people would be salty if they took a randomly good character and decide, okay, now I'm evil. It's like if they decided to do the Horus Heresy again, but it was Rabuti Gilliman going, suddenly I don't like organization. Not the same character.
To their credit, though, they're damn good with that bow and arrow, especially when it's a magical lightsaber bow and arrow. And dragons. The High Elves are best friends of almost every dragon that isn't from Cathay. Dragons are scary in a fight, and let's be honest with ourselves. If a dragon declared your hometown to be the best thing ever and made sure to always visit and help out when it was in trouble, you'd have an ego the size of Mount Everest too. Overall, if you like elves, you'll like these guys.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like elves or only associate Warhammer's elves with the Eldar, the High Elves' ability to actually put their money where their mouth is might win you over. And
I mean, this might sound odd, but I actually like the Eldar. Hell, I even like the horribleness of the Drukhari. I mean, I like them as villains better, but I like them as villains. I just enjoy them as a faction in general.
if nothing else, there's an elf character named Aletha Nar who skins dark elves alive because he just hates them that much, and his overall...
Also, I'm being told by No Name, and this is something I want to pull up because that's actually fascinating. Fantasy Cain managed to leave a permanent scar in Slaanesh face, regardless of their form. Oh yeah, because while the gods in Chaos in 40k are amorphous masses of energy in the warp that can have whatever form they need, And if they have a form, it's mostly made up of all of the spawn and demons that they control, who are just aspects of them, but smaller and unaware of that because it's funny. In fantasy, and I think AOS, they are corporeal. You can fuck them over directly, which is also how Slaanesh got literally put into a ball of fuck this and replaced by the Great Horned Rat.
Or all Michael Myers if he had pointy ears and special forces training.
Yeah.
Hard to get more unelven than that guy. Speaking of ego, though,
Dark elves. Yeah.
take the stereotypical elven arrogance. Or if you're not a big fan of the race, elven...
Dark elves. This is literally as edgy as you think it is. And I have a Daughters of Cain army when it comes to AOS, so I can't say shit right now. Although I have the snake first because I just thought that was a cool faction idea. So yeah, technically this is the faction I play.
Racism. Now jack it up to the logical extreme endpoint of the concept so that they don't only think they're the best, they think of all other races as vermin that should either serve them as slaves, be hunted for sport, or outright eradicated. Welcome to Nagaroth, friends. It only goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
Warhammer North America sucks. It's home to the Dark Elves after they got kicked out of their old home, and the entire thing is either a frozen hellhole, a desert hellhole, or a frozen hellhole bordering actual hell.
So, in other words, basically North America. If you haven't been to Utah, Nevada, or Denver during the wrong season, you don't know what I mean. And if you do, they are nice, but only when you're there in the exact right time.
Something called the Altar
Also,
of
fire
Ultimate
season is the
Darkness
thing.
inside of this place. Do you think anyone that lives here is going to be nice? Sure enough, the Dark Elves aren't nice. There used to be some human tribes that lived in Nagaroth,
Warhammer
and then
Online?
the Dark Elves killed or enslaved them all. They have cities built into mountains they use as ships to raid and enslave others. They
Mountain
kidnap
ships?
high elf children to raise as Dark Elves, and the entire society looks like what would happen if every single Decepticon was Starscream. Murder and treachery are only illegal if you get caught, and if you're
Wait, it's illegal if you get caught? Damn. Unironically, I thought that would be more happy for you. It's like, congratulations, we're not going to trust you and you'll be murdered next. But we celebrate that you got away with it until you didn't. And then you die.
powerful enough, not even then. They're led by Malekith and his mother Morathi, the same two elves who formed the Dark Elves 10,000 years prior. Morathi is kind of just always awful, but sometimes if you squint real hard, Malekith can almost sort of a little bit resemble a noble elf hero he once was. Then he does things like instituting the elven god of murder as the head of the Dark Elf pantheon, uses demons as auxiliaries when he invades Ulthuan, and starts the Warhammer Fantasy Triangle slave trade. In spite of failing to retake Ulthuan every time he tries, he's a damn powerful wizard and warrior both. He's just Darth Vader, actually. He's even got the suit of armor that helps keep him alive because he was severely burned. And who—
Oh yeah, actually I just read the comment for Tudor saying exactly, or actually, was it Tudor? Yep, Tudor is the one who mentioned the fires burning him eternally and the armors for that. And yeah, he just mentioned basically Vader for the same reason. Nice. Also, I'm just going to pull this comment up. And Josh, or just Michigan when the weather decides to suck today. Great Lakes on 3 sides. Yeah. I got family up there. There's a reason I can't visit them during the winter, man. Also, I drove through Detroit and there was a tree in the middle of the road. I don't mean like in the divide between left and right. I mean in the middle of the lane. That was a thing. And it wasn't like a small thing either. It was like a decently large sapling to the point where I couldn't hit it without damaging my car. How the hell that happened, I have no idea. It wasn't an empty road.
who can forget his mommy issues? Although I don't think Anakin ever piped his mother, so a little bit different there. There is no height of cruelty that Dark Elves don't aspire to.
Yeah.
Acting nice gets you killed because it clearly means you're weak. Admitting you're a bit tired or injured gets you killed because if you were strong, you wouldn't be injured, so clearly you're weak and someone else more fitting should take your spot. They don't have as many dragon allies, and the ones they do are corrupted by dark magic.
Wait, they just have random dinosaurs too? Huh. That wasn't actually aware of that.
So they just grab whatever monstrosity they can find in the Midwest and put it in chains until it's time for battle. Much like their cousins in space, if you find you're about to be captured by them, it's probably best to just off yourself. They may not have quite as exotic measures of torturing you, but they make up for it with a real go-getter attitude in the field of human rights violations.
Oh yeah, that's why I said Canada. That makes sense.
There's a holiday called Blood Night. The cult of the god of murder goes around and kidnaps people to murder. They steal elven girls to be trained as witch elves like them, and they throw elven boys in a cauldron of boiling blood. If they survive, they get trained as an assassin. I don't think a concrete statistic has ever been given, but you can assume that not many people survive this. If you like being edgy, either ironically or because you think suffering is inherently deep, you'll like the Druki. I can already feel the viewer retention going down.
Druki. I'm sorry. Is that actually what they're called in fantasy? That kind of makes it better, man. It's actually ridiculous. And yeah, just looking at this armor, it is both really cool, really beautiful, and the dumbest thing I can imagine. So, yeah, exactly what I thought of fantasy elves, who are being dark and edgy.
Though, from how long I've been talking about elves, so how about we move to their polar opposites?
Dwarves. Dwarves!
Elves are posh, regal, and always at least a little bit uptight. Dwarfs are brash, to the point, and consider sobriety a sin. While the elves of Warhammer have a few
I like it.
things that make them stand out a bit from the standard elf template, the dwarfs of Warhammer could fit in just about any setting with minimal issue. They like drinking, they like mining, they hate orcs, and getting them to compliment non-dwarf craftsmanship is like pulling teeth from an orc. They hate magic both because it's weird elf nonsense and because when the old ones made the dwarves, they made them so opposed to magic their mere presence makes it not work properly.
Oh. Wait, are they an entire race of gnolls? That's where 40k stole the idea from? No, I'm saying orcs, just dwarves? Oh, I'm not sure if that carried into AOS, but that's actually a fascinating little tidbit on its own right. I wonder if it would actually have an impact on just the inherent magical nature of chaos. Probably not, because then things would have been different.
Love mining in mountains because that's just what dwarfs love. They do have three things that make them stand out, though.
Grudges?
First is that it's pronounced dwarfs, not dwarves. Second is that these dwarfs are industrious little fellas. They've discovered oil and how to use it, and with it make helicopters, trains, and more. While humanity has galleons with cannons and the elves have either magical dragon ships or city-sized slave ships, the dwarfs have ironclads, submarines, and aircraft carriers. They hate using them.
They have aircraft carriers? I mean, they kind of took that to the next extent in AOS, where it was fantasy steampunk flying ships, and honestly, that's still freaking cool looking. But I guess they took it more, they're basically a naval power, huh?
Because no proper dwarf would ever be happy with anything but solid earth under their feet, but they have.
Which is why they would probably hate AOS when they found out, but still, that's actually kind of fascinating.
Them. They're slow to change to the point that anything less than 500 years old gets you complained at if you suggest using it, but at least some of them understand that the 20-barreled artillery piece is nice to have even if their ancestors might not.
They have a 20-barreled artillery piece? Oh, that sounds fun. Also, I'm just going to pull up your comment quickly. And Ra, you mentioned the dwarves, the best faction of fantasy. Outside of their flying fortress, they beat AOS in many respects. I don't know enough about them, but apparently if they just have a flying fortress, that actually is pretty just cool. They also have a blimp. And the dwarves have helicopters, airships, and lots of guns. Air power, man. Gotta love it. And they took that to the extreme in AOS, and frankly, there's a lot of things in AOS that tempted me. I might have gotten into Daughters of Cain, but frankly, the dwarves were right there with the sky stuff. Would I ever play the game with them? I have no idea, but they look cool.
Not approve. The second is that these dwarfs are the embodiment of the word spite. They're bitter that the other races won't just conform to proper dwarf ways. They hate orcs and goblins for ruining their once great cities.
Yeah.
They hate the elves for that war they got into thousands of years ago. A war that ultimately started, mind you, because the dwarf diplomat forcibly had his beard shaved. There were some other factors leading up to it, but
that's what started the war? I mean, just in general, that sounds like a horrible thing to do. And then these are the dwarfiest of dwarves that could ever dwarf. I'm trying to do a dwarf accent. I have no idea what that sounds like. I realized halfway through I probably should stop. But I did anyways. And they shaved their beard forcibly, meaning that they were opposed to it and made it very obvious they were opposed to it, and they still did it. Oh, wow. That. Yeah. Yeah, they walked into that one. That's the absolute. Dear God.
That was the final straw. The average dwarf doesn't know about the lizardmen much, but they'd certainly hate them too if they knew the Slann were involved in shifting some mountain ranges around that destroyed a whole lot of dwarf holds. Have you ever wronged a dwarf? Into the book you go. The Great Book of Grudges, that is. Every single thing that has in some way wronged the dwarf race is put down in there. Most dwarf holds have their own personal ones for slight against them in particular. Some dwarfs have their own personal book. Even if they don't, they have photographic memory. If you've wronged them, they'll remember. It doesn't even need to be on purpose. A human town once shorted the dwarfs 2 coins by accident in exchange for some construction work. The dwarfs sent an army and killed everyone in it. If this happens to you and you try to seek some sort of retribution for this insane idea of compensation they seem to have, you're going back in the book for any harm you might cause doing it. They will spend centuries and entire military campaigns fighting wars to right grudges. And
yeah, dwarfs. They're literally just... Oh God, they're literally a Project Moon faction. This is the middle. Like, that's their entire shtick. Huh. You wronged us, you must die. I was not expecting to make that comparison in this video. This is, actually kind of cool, but not what I was expecting.
Naturally, anything that happens to them during these campaigns leads to more grudges, which leads to them trying to right those grudges, which causes more grudges. You know that saying about digging 2 holes when you set out for revenge? 2 holes is not nearly enough for the Dowie. And who could forget the Slayers? Let's say you're a dwarf, and you committed some seriously dishonorable action. Maybe your negligence led to other dwarfs getting killed. Maybe you fled at the height of a battle. Or maybe you just lost a bit too much money on a bet, or had your beard shaved against your will.
Oh, that. Whoa. So in other words, if there's ever a clean-shaven dwarf, they're a slayer because fuck this shit. Still don't get how everything immediately goes mohawk, though. I know it's a thing. I just don't get why. Oh, dude.
In any of those cases, there's only one option available to you. Kill yourself. Take the Slayer Oath and die in battle. There's no redeeming yourself in any way but death. There's funerals held for those who take the Slayer Oath before they even leave to find something to kill them, because for all intents and purposes, they've died and the message just hasn't gone through to them yet. If you want some great books that explore Slayers, dwarfs, and the Warhammer world, read Gotrek and Felix.
I always wonder if they do anything about the psychology of Gotrek now that Felix is dead because world ended. Although a lot of souls are coming back, so he might come back eventually. Or maybe he survived, I just missed it. And he was too angry to die to literally the world ending to chaos, and he managed to kill his way through it to the next one. That's just the most badass boast ever, because he wasn't a god. He just became one because everything else died.
Read Gotrek and Felix anyway.
I just want a model, man.
Now, while the dwarves certainly have their work cut out for them, they've got some good stuff that makes them cool regardless. They can't use magic like wizards, so instead they grab it by the balls and hit it with a hammer until it works perfectly how they want it to with their runes. The longer their beards are, the more respected they are, and there's even a military unit called Longbeards. If their beard can touch the floor, they get equipped with some of the best armor dwarf money can buy. They've got the finest weapons in the setting, the finest armor in the setting, and while they may be slow as all hell, if they catch you, it's game over. If you like facial chair, hate change, and despise other people for being different, take a...
Facial chair? Wait, do they have actual props to keep the beard up? Huh. Also, I'm just going to pull up this comment. So, Marta, I knew Gotrek became a demigod. I didn't know it was due to his axe, though. Huh. To be fair, Gotrek wants to die, and hates the fact he got bamboozled into godhood and thus cannot die. Yeah. The Mohawks, because their god of war, Grimnir, allegedly did it when going to war with Chaos when it first arrived. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. You mess with Thorgrim's beard, your coupons, your entire lineage dies. Ha! Nice. I know it's probably not a beard chair, it's like a chair for the beard, chair with beard, but I love the idea that you have such a huge beard, you need an extra chair for it. If I was better at sculpting with green stuff, I would do this. I would get dwarves just for that.
Look at the dwarfs. Imagine dwarfs without that silly grudge ideology. You've committed a wrong and have to make up for it, but you can right it without causing your own death. What? And what's more, you can properly use magic. Fireball and lightning and all those other lovely spells you can think of, without the shackles of tradition or even their own biology.
This feels weird. Why do I feel we're about to do something really, really fucked up, like an undead race or something.
Technology holding them
I thought we
back,
did those
they can
already.
produce wonders of both magic and industry. Unfortunately, they replace stupid grudges with one of the most horrific slaver cultures around, and they forego tradition to worship actual demons and dark gods. And being able to use magic isn't necessarily a good thing, because it eventually turns them into stone statues. These are the Chaos Dwarfs, and they're horrifying in a way the more human followers of Chaos can only dream of being. Saying they take the best of the dwarfs is sort of overstating it, because the best of the dwarfs is their willingness to stand by both the letter and spirit of their word. They'll have your back no matter what. Plus, while their incredible stubbornness does hold them back from a lot of progress they can make and gets them into some stupid conflicts, it also means they're not only going to accomplish whatever they set out to do, but always stand by your side. If the dwarfs say they're going to help you, they're going to help you. And if a human, dwarf, and elf are all fighting together, the dwarf is going to be the last one to break. The Chaos Dwarves take these traits and have molded them in a way that is best suited to being an evil bastard. The craftsmanship of the dwarves makes weapons, yes, but also architectural wonders and genuine...
This almost feels like someone really, really, really loved the dwarves, but they wanted to make them evil, so it's like, hey, why don't we just make better dwarves? Oh shit, we made better dwarves. We can't do better dwarves with chaos. Cartoonishly evil, but then competent. It feels like someone was running out of ideas, then had the worst and best idea at the same time. How does this actually play out, though? They're Chaos Dwarves, and I'm being told they industrialize Chaos war crimes. Oh, so they're basically Iron Warriors, but competent.
Pieces of art so good it can make a man weep. The Chaos Dwarfs make hell factories that are 2,000% efficient and make the most brutal weapons Chaos has to offer.
Damn!
They take the runic magic of the dwarfs and use it to bind demons into their weapons and armor.
Yeah.
The demons aren't happy with
Competent.
this, but the Chaos Dwarfs are still dwarfs. They're so good at what they do.
I have no idea if that's a real model or not, but that looks absolutely amazing. Can you imagine that on the tabletop? Oh, I would love the internal fire effect. I've learned how to do that. It's actually really fun. You paint all the fire effects, and then you just dry brush black and then colors on top of that into the sections you don't want lit so that the fire color comes over the edges so like it's glowing. It's absolutely fascinating, but you have to be very careful not to brush too heavily on the lower recess parts because then the color basically gets covered over too easily. It's a very fun inversion of how you usually paint, where shadows in the recess, where this one is bright in the recess. Very fun. Also, Ron, I'm going to pull up your comment. By the way, they are still alive when they turn into statues, so they put on the rose to their capital, being unable to move. Oh, that is horrific! Are they still able to cast magic while stone statued? I have no idea, and that sounds terrifying as well. Like, just their own stone dreadnoughts at that point. Damn. They are the better Chaos Warriors without being Space Marines. They are thus 1,000% superior Iron Warriors. Yeah. The biggest thing holding back Iron Warriors is probably still Perturabo. Because he is the most self-defeating idiot ever. He has every answer and decides not to use them.
That more often than not, the demons are powerless once the dwarfs get their hands on them. They aren't numerous, and they aren't even terribly expansionist, but when the Chaos Dwarfs do go to war, there's nothing that can truly equal it. The finest weapons and armor, just like the dwarfs, only
and
now
they also have
bolstered with
tusks.
the power of Hellspawn. They even have the closest thing to a nice chaos god to worship, which give them all sorts of benefits. Hashut. Sure, he's called the Father of Darkness and is the god of tyranny.
Oh! So this is something that still feels weird in 40k terms, saying a chaos god who's not one of the big four. But even that is slowly changing as they're explicitly bringing in outside chaos gods who are not the big four, but minor chaos gods, but still chaos gods. Vashtor, for example. So I guess that's something fantasy gave to 40k as well. They just took decades to catch up with. Huh.
And is overall exactly as evil as you'd expect from that, but he doesn't screw the dwarfs over. They want power, he likes it when tyrants are in power, so in exchange for them using their dwarf talents to enslave others, he gives them power.
Yeah.
The most commonly seen use of Chaos Dwarfs is as artillery crewmen for the Hell Cannon unit, as well as
Are those
frequently
faces?
selling
Those are
Chaos
faces.
Lord's weapons and armor. This is because of both their isolationist nature, and because they don't really have an army. They do have legacy rules for the old world, and they have had an army, unlike Cathay, but their status...
Wait. How does Old World have legacy rules? Because they brought it back, and that's probably what he's referencing to, not the actual previous rules of the game before it was initially crushed. Okay, that makes a little more sense then.
Properly playable is a bit all over the place. Still though, if you don't mind legacy rules and finding either old minis or third-party ones...
Are their helmets actually glowing? Also, speaking of Iron Warriors, like, that's literally just the Iron Warrior helm. They basically just made the Iron Warriors out of fantasy Chaos Dwarves. It's actually kind of blatant looking at it this way. Shit, man. It's literally, like, that's the helmet. Huh. They're just caution stripes away from being midget space marines. Or, I guess in this case, literal dwarf marines. Huh. Okay. Also, apparently, according to Martin, they do have AOS one now. Oh. And a Mesopotamian drip in big hats, yeah. And according to Hammer, honestly, Perturabo is probably the embodiment of how the Emperor comes off when you break him down to what he does. Yeah. Yeah, they're probably very similar. Except the Emperor occasionally does not ignore the good ideas. A lot of other people just fuck them up. Like the entire, hey, don't worship chaos. Yeah. Just don't fuck with chaos at all. Magic's bad. And Bill, your recommendation, I will add, you added War Crimes to Minecraft by Finnegas. Why would you play Canada in Minecraft? Oh, God.
You can feel the Chaos Dwarf army. So if you like the Dwarfs but wish they were horrendous in every way possible, check out the Chaos Dwarfs. Just get used to people calling them Chorfs. Not the most dignified nickname, that one.
Why? Ogre
the
kingdoms.
Ogres were the last race the old ones made before pissing off. They're resistant to chaos, tough.
Wait, they were actually one of the non-chaos made factions. I'll be honest, I always thought they were probably just going to be chaos. I didn't realize they were old one made. Huh. Not what I was expecting. Also, Ron, I'm just going to pull up your comment. Chaos Dwarves' preferred slaves are orcs, and they are made the mistake of making black orcs stronger, smarter, and the best. Do those have rules? Because orcs that are strong and smart, it's like, we're going to war, get the Umis. Prepare to make vengeance happen. I don't know how an orc would sound. I can't do an accent to save my life. Oh, God. But yeah, that actually sounds awesome. As soon as you get a smart orc, things get really scary really fast, man.
Unlike the elves, capable of changing things up quickly unlike the dwarfs, and are as ambitious and fluid as mankind. Unfortunately, the older ones couldn't quite get them to stop eating everything in sight, and never properly finished them before they left, or their homelands for that matter. When chaos invaded, the ogres were left unfinished in this state, and many became nomadic after they ate everything in whatever their first homeland was. They also ate the ancestors of the modern-day giants, who were a whole lot smarter, wiser, and powerful than the inbred alcoholic morons that giants are in Warhammer today. Things were made worse for them when they decided to migrate into Cathay, because the Dragon Emperor dropped a meteor on their homeland and blew it up. Now they had nowhere to return to, were still really hungry.
I'm sorry. Is that just a Sarlacc, but in fantasy? I'm assuming it's chaos related. It's definitely chaos related. Oh dear God, man. And according to Valerian, they were made to eat chaos. Like, I'm just pulling up the comments to make sure you guys see that. I'm not bullshitting. Like, that's actually what it said. They were made to eat chaos. Okay, that's a thing. Always hungry. They just went to the wrong place. Okay. And I'm being told that is their god.
And that meteor made a big hole called the Great Maw. It's a big hole in the ground with teeth, and the ogres throw food and people into it to get magical powers. They also worship a volcano and drink its lava to get fire magic. Neither of the past two sentences were made up by me. I love this setting. They're vaguely based on Mongolia, but I don't think Genghis Khan ever ate an entire city's population. Killed everyone in it, sure, but I don't think there was mass cannibalism. The ogres, though, do exactly that. Everything about them revolves around food. Their social hierarchy is in large part determined by how fat you are. They have a race of goblinoid slaves called Noblars they employ as equal parts pack mule, assistant chefs, and snacks. They go to war to eat other races' food and or the other races. One of the most common ways you'll see ogres around is as mercenaries, because while they are stupid, they're smart enough to realize being a mercenary means you can travel the world sampling all the food you can find, and you'll even get paid for the trouble.
That is a look. I'm kind of surprised if they're made to eat everything. They just don't have a bigger mouth then. This is... And I'm being told by Terran, the Great Maw is not chaos related. The Great Maw is the Tyranids. So basically these guys would be what if the Tyranids had... Or Tyranids, wow. Tyranids had human forms. You get ogres. I can't speak today. Ogres. And that does kind of confirm the Tyranids were a creation of the old ones, because these would be the fantasy equivalent of the Tyranids. Huh. I mean, I know a lot of things carry over, but I'm wondering at what point, like, this is a much bigger change between the two settings. Okay, sure. Also, is that just a dried lemon or a gold piece? I can't tell.
Gut is a sacred part of an ogre's body, to the point that oftentimes it's the only part of an ogre they keep protected with armor. That might sound stupid, but consider they're twice as tall, 4 times as wide, and 8 times as heavy as a normal person.
Yeah, that would do
and
it.
Can reliably defeat demon invasions. The closest thing to an ogre's central government is Greece's Goldtooth tribe that sets up toll booths on the trading routes between Cathay and the Old World. Aside from that, though, they can be literally anywhere. They're happy to sell their services to all races, and sometimes they can even become corrupted by chaos.
Oh?
Being resistant to chaos, corruption, and immune to it are different things, especially if they willingly join for one reason or another.
Food.
Sometimes they even embrace the cultures of the places they go willingly. An ogre isn't exactly gonna fit in an imperial noble's party, but are you gonna tell the 9-foot-tall slab of muscle with a racial reputation for eating people that he's being a bit of a slob? No, you aren't. And if someone does, everyone at your fancy dinner party now has some rather gruesome entertainment, while your ogre guest has dessert.
And frankly, I'm pretty sure there's a few people who might have done that intentionally. You know, if you don't tell me that there's at least one dark elf who doesn't have a friend who's an ogre because they just think it's funny to watch them eat the other little people they don't like, I would be very surprised.
The chaos.
Also, I forgot Ogrins from 40k. Yep, I completely forgot about them altogether. That's on me. Hell, I even just played Darktide recently.
Demons are pretty similar between fantasy and 40k. They're all servants/bits of a greater god, sufficient concentrations of magic can allow them to show up,
and also, if you buy one box set, it's good for the other settings as well. That makes it good for 3 different games now. Yeah.
Wizard messes up their spell, they can manifest that way too. They want to tear down the mortal world and bring ruin to the realms of man, elf, and dwarf, all that good stuff you can expect of demons. The only real difference is how they came about. In 40k, all the Chaos Gods have birthdays. Slaanesh has the most concrete one, but the other ones at one point very much came into existence. Warped timey-wimey cop-out garbage means they've also always existed, but I don't care about that. In fantasy, they have always existed, though. They're just evil gods who exist to ruin stuff. It's how it works. Chaos came about when they broke through the portals on each of the planet's poles when the old ones overused them to ferry materials and magic to their burgeoning creations. Other than that, pretty much the same, if with a small bit more emphasis on their positive aspects. Only a small bit, though.
Wait. They actually acknowledge us? I mean, they do have positive aspects in 40k, it's just they're all inherently corrupted to basically be a gateway into the bad aspects because it gives them more power. So they actually have legitimate positive reasons here? That makes them way more developed than 40k then. Granted, they're fine as just a big, extremely no possible good option in 40k as well, because it makes the setting more dynamic, because everything is shades of gray, except for these guys. They're just bad.
Khorne still likes war, Nurgle still likes disease, Tzeentch still likes scheming, and Slaanesh still likes degeneracy. Same demon units, same greater demons, hell, most of the named demons are the same. Where they really shine and differentiate between settings isn't their followers. Let's get GW's least favorite child out of the way first.
Slaanesh?
The Beastmen are a cross between beasts and men. Being born of chaos itself, the Dark Gods don't need to bribe them with gifts to ensure their worship. Unfortunately for them, this means the Beastmen rarely, if ever, get any gifts from the gods. They know they'll always have their worship, so they get the scraps the proper Chaos Warriors get. Given that one theory of how they came about is man and beast getting a bit too friendly with each other, I don't feel too bad for them. Don't let that fool you, though. While the nations of men consider them to be a nuisance for all but the most isolated towns, and the dwarfs view them similarly, the Wood Elves know the true danger they represent.
Oh, wait, they actually are dangerous? Oh. I've heard that there were, like, the Chaos Beastmen armies, but I never knew how good or not they were. Also, I'm just going to pull up this comic because I think it's fascinating right now. So, Cathay and the Empire, like to incorporate ogres citizens into their military so you can kick bash them as infantry and heavy gun cannon weapon users. Yeah, that makes sense. It would be kind of fun. Fun fact, Slaanesh used to be the head god of the Dark Elves before they changed it. Morathi partied with Daemonates canonically. Oh. That is definitely a change. Probably a better one, though, because more chaos than Elf God, although created from elves is still part of how they were created in 40k. I wonder, was Slaanesh initially created in 40k or fantasy first? Like, what were the faction creation dates? It's been so long now, I don't really have any idea, but that might actually be interesting to see if anything went the other way around from 40k back into fantasy. And in fantasy, if they get more power from the positive stuff than the negative stuff, you recall. Really? Now, Bill, that's actually fascinating in its own right. What would you do if you corrupted an evil chaos god with positive traits? That would be fascinating in its own right, but I don't think they did that. They are dangerous, but they get the Worf and lore, and also run into Gotrek and Felix. Yeah, that would do it. Slanesh was in first in fantasy? Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
In the forest of the world, millions of them lurk, and when they go to war, entire swaths of the country are trampled underneath their hooves.
Oh, there's
they
that many.
defile nature with their every step, and won't stop their savage crusade until the civilized peoples of the world exist in a constant state of being hunted by their bestial overlords. At least that's what we're told in between lore blurbs of them being butchered like the cattle they look like.
Yeah.
For the love of God, at least the Eldar are powerful on the tabletop more often than not. The Beastmen usually suck on tabletop and in the lore.
Oh.
I'm trying to be a hype man for the factions here, but while I wasn't for Bretonnia because I hate them, I'm not for the Beastmen because I pity them. For what it's worth, though, they are incredibly dangerous to the average person in this setting. Villages at the frontier of almost every faction are regularly under assault by Beastmen raiders, and when they gather in force, they'll be wiped off the map at a moment's notice. And since they're all part animal, they have incredibly sharp senses. If you get in a fight with one while you're traveling, it's already game over. You can probably take that one on, but the 20 or so more beelining it in your direction because
that would kind of
fuck
you.
You're
Dead at that point.
The Beastmen are a savage race to the point that things like intact walls drive them to frothing rage, such as their hatred for civilization.
Oh.
All they do in their free time is get into brutal fights amongst each other, sometimes involving one challenging another for a position in the hierarchy, but usually just to assert dominance or for fun, hunt people, and drink. They do have some forms of worship for the Chaos God.
Wait, they just drink? Does that mean that there's an entire industry of brewers? Not the detail I was expecting to hear.
And their shamans both help construct effigies and are actually revered by other beastmen as something above their common squabbling, but for the most part, they're every stereotype of barbarians squashed into one. Aside from those shamans, they have no desire to form their own culture, civilization, or cities. They just want to hunt like the beasts they are. The beastmen may be a bit of an acquired taste, but for what it's worth, I don't think I've ever seen people address beastmen players with anything but some measure of respect. While the beasts of chaos are no more, the OG beastmen of fantasy have returned to the tabletop.
I'm assuming respect because if you still play this faction that you know is absolutely this bad, it means this person's either an amazing player who can make shit work, or they're willingly taking the L and you might as well have a fun time.
If you like the idea of being the savage force of nature that just wants to ruin, all the while being backed by the dark gods, the Beastmen might be for you. Just, don't expect to win all that often. Part of the respect Beastmen players get is for sticking with an army that Games Workshop seems to hold in utter contempt.
Warriors of Chaos.
I'm incredibly biased, but I do not care for the motivations of most of the traitor legions. They strike me as like listening to a story about me and my siblings not getting along when we were kids, which I'm sure is at least...
Yeah, I mean, Games Workshop has heavily pushed, you gotta love chaos, because the writing is very good for the chaos perspectives. But then it's always like, oh yeah, but also, they're literally just horrible.
Partly intentional, but that's not the kind of motivation I want for why someone sold their soul to the forces of hell. At least not on a faction-wide level. By contrast, let's look at the Warriors of Chaos motivations for worshipping chaos. I'd say there's two blanket ones you can say. The reasonable one is that they live in the barren, icy lands of Norska.
Yeah.
Aside from the southernmost regions, permafrost covers the whole land. No crops can be grown, and few animals are around to hunt. Because of their proximity to the North Pole, where the realm of chaos intersects with reality, a lot of those animals are heavily mutated, if not outright demonic. A lot of these people are also almost explicitly forsaken by Sigmar, as a lot of the ones who live there now are the descendants of the ones Sigmar forced out when he was forming the Empire.
Oh, so this is actually literally Sigmar's fault. That's actually something, and this is going to sound weird, that I kind of like about a setting when the big good guy explicitly has bad ideas that they have to then later pay for. But Sigmar, I know, is generally actually a good guy. So when he fucks up, it's like, this is not the Emperor making a mistake, and you don't really know if this is him fucking around or not. It's like, okay, that happened. This is like, oh shit, the guy did something stupid. But he's a good guy, but also, God, what the fuck? Huh. I like it. Honestly, I like the differentiation, so you can tell the setting's different rather than having the same motivation for the same equivalent of a character. Also, I'm just going to pull this up. And Josh, kind of like Age of the Imperium players. Yeah, I mean, I've always been tempted to just get a bunch of proxies to do an entire army of assassins. But the thing is, I'm not even sure I could do that anymore. Because I don't think there's enough to even play it. I mean, unless you ally in a knight, which would take care of a lot of point issues, and then you can have 3 of each of the rest. And it's like, at that point, yeah, you might be able to do it. But I'm not even sure allies are still a rule or not anymore. For all I know, they might have got rid of that. Also, according to Martin, Sigmar is a barbarian chief. He was conquering tribes. Yeah, Sigmar threw them out. They probably did something to deserve it, yep. But sins of the father apparently didn't come back to bite him in the face until it did.
With all that in mind, I think it's at least understandable that these people would turn to the Chaos Gods for protection and worship. If the only option of worship is the guy who's all about plague, you might as well hope he's in a good mood and will keep the plague at bay in exchange for a few sacrificed southerners. The other motivation, while less relatable, is also much more fun. Just wanting to be an evil, powerful overlord.
Yeah.
Why do you worship the Dark Gods? Because they give you ultra-powerful cursed armor you can use to give them more sacrifices to gain more power with. Why do you slaughter in the name of the Blood God and all the others? Because
Murder.
It's fun. Who gives a damn about morality? That orphanage made the mistake of being in front of you, so it obviously had to go. If the Blood Dragons are a heavy metal album cover, the Warriors of Chaos are every heavy metal album cover combined into one.
Wait, that's just what they look like in-game? Damn. Yeah, you could definitely see where all of Chaos in 40k was this design. Some of these a little bit, but this one. Hell, I'm pretty sure I've seen that exact helmet in 40k recently. Yeah, it makes sense. And solid black armor, spikes everywhere, horns. Yeah, it's a good look. And I didn't even notice the top knot, which I still think is the dumbest thing ever. I can't stand top knots. Personal opinion, I don't know why. I just don't like them. Also, I'm being told that Sigmar did the thing when he was being punched in the face for something, and it was Nagash's fault. And No Name mentioned it was corrupted by Nagash's crown. Of course it's fucking Nagash's fault. You know what? I shouldn't even be surprised. I am, because I don't know enough about the setting, but I am surprised. And yet sometimes it is.
Kill for the Dark Gods at every possible moment. Let loose your darkest desires onto the world, because you have the explicit backing of the powers that be to do so. The Norskins who live in the frozen north will make pilgrimages to the northern pole and realm of chaos to become true warriors of darkness. If they're unlucky or unworthy, they'll turn into chaos spawn or demon food. If they're lucky or worthy enough, they'll become mighty chaos lords. And if they're really lucky and get just the right amount of attention from their gods, they can become demon princes of chaos, immortal beings with the blessings of the gods themselves to pillage across the world in their name. Look at this dude. He has 4 weapons visible alone, and his armor looks like he just grabbed every—
Oh god, that's a single person. If you had told me this was a 40k Space Marine, I would believe it. Like, unironically, that looks more like a Space Marine, but this is fantasy? Holy shit. It's like, where do the shoulders end and the legs begin? You just look at this and tell me, because I'm having a hard time seeing it. Also, I just realized he has a face crotch cover. And I think it's a lie because the tongue is there still. And it's a demon, so it probably is actually a— oh god.
Single bit of scrap metal around and had a demon turn it into something almost coherent to look at. If you want to play the bad guys who revel in being bad guys,
yeah,
for the sake
that
of
would do it.
The Warriors of Chaos have no equal. But believe it or not, these guys aren't the evilest faction.
What? They count as the evilest faction? Really? Yeah, I guess self-destruction does kind of negate them, so you wouldn't know about. Also, No Name, I'm going to pull up your comment. In the Chaos Wastes, there's a tribe known as the Tong, which are literally half daemons. Like, possessed or— you know, if it's Slaanesh, that makes perfect sense.
I love the Skaven. Take a rat, make it person-sized,
This is probably one of the factions that is incredibly tempting to me because there's so many weird things. I want to buy them to paint all the variations. Just need more time to do that.
Walk on 2 legs, and fill it with hate. Now let them outnumber everyone else combined by a factor of 10, give them energy weapons and the foulest of magics, and
apparently the one time they decided to get serious, stop Nagash from completely winning. Honestly, I'm half tempted to say that if someone just made a small change in history and they got pissed at the rest of the Chaos Gods, the end of the old world wouldn't have happened because the Skaven would be like, no, you can't destroy it, we must do it. Because they could probably stop it, which, fuck it, why not?
desire to see everyone else brought low before them. With that, you have the Skaven, and they are truly glorious. Unlike the Chaos Gods, their god of the Horned Rat has absolutely no positives. His own little territory in the realm of Chaos is the realm of Ruin. It sucks, and in there is a greater demon of his for every single Skaven, all of whom also suck. With numbers and power like they have, there's only one reason the Skaven haven't already taken over the world.
Wait. He has a greater demon for every Skaven.
It sucks, and in there is a greater demon of his for every single Skaven.
God damn! Like, literally, yeah! A greater demon for every Skaven. And the Skaven outnumber everyone already? Damn. Also, I'm being told by Josh they screwed Nagash over in AOS 2. Yes, but his model is amazing. I've seen some models that weren't. That is not one that had that issue. That is literally one of those level models. You look at them and you just go, I don't care. That's beautiful. You win the game. I mean, I might actually beat you, but no, that just is awesome, man.
All of whom also suck. With numbers and power like they have, there's only one reason the Skaven haven't already taken over the world. The thing their god and race embodies more than anything else is the word asshole. They hate the other races for sure.
Yeah.
They're petty and spiteful enough that even though they don't have any uses for gold, they mine it solely because it inconveniences everyone else. But they hate each other only a fraction less than they hate everyone else. They're also all power-hungry morons who are convinced that if they were in charge, they could lead Skavendom to victory. And of course, themselves to a life of luxury and power. So one will have a plan to defeat a dwarf army, and then all his underlings immediately begin sabotaging each other to look good for the commander, sabotaging the commander to take his place, and then sabotaging themselves because they're just stupid. They eat each other for food, the Skaven at the top bully the ones below them, and this lovely form of Reaganomics trickles all the way down to the common clan rat bullying Skaven slaves because the rat above him bullied him because the rat above him bullied him. Of course,
except for the red armored ones who are still horrible, but apparently, because I saw the video on them already, are what would be the horrible, evil, terrible, no good faction in any other setting. But for them is like the bright light on a hilltop of the greatest and kindest Skaven ever, which is still anywhere else like, oh, you're basically a dark elf, except somehow, by Skaven standards, they'd be nice. It'd be like going from 40k into Fallout. You're sitting there going like, whoa, why is this world so clean and peaceful? And meaning that unironically and functionally being right about it.
Of course, none of this matters in terms of defeating them. For one, they're rat people. There's a reason the only human-inhabited place on Earth that doesn't have rats is Alberta. The Skaven literally breed like rats because they are. In the time it takes you to kill one, they've already given birth to another 1,000. In a chapter from a Skaven character's point of view, the commanding wizard of the Skaven army remarked it was impressive how they managed to pull off a victory despite only outnumbering the enemy 4-1. When a 4-to-1 ratio is what they consider to be a pretty even fight, you can rest easy, knowing there's a lot of rats under your feet. Or don't rest easy. I wouldn't. And of course their technology. It's the best in the world. They have nuclear weapons. They burrow under the ground and put them under people or places they don't like, which is everywhere and everyone. The only places the Skaven don't have some presence on is Ulthuan, the High Elf home, and Athelloren, the Wood Elf home. They can't get to Ulthuan because
I'm assuming because magic, and I don't get the Wood Elf one though. Like, do the trees eat them?
Because it's a floating island continent that doesn't touch.
Oh, it floats! Does that mean it just moves around as well? Huh.
The sea floor. There's no ground for them to dig up under through. They can't get to Athelloren, meanwhile, because the ground itself is alive and actively hates them for trespassing.
Oh yeah, so the trees actually eat them, which oddly enough isn't that odd, considering since the time this fantasy faction was probably created, we've learned that trees are carnivorous. Just, it's by proxy. The root networks are intertwined, they do share information, and will actually distribute nutrients to cut down trees if the root system is still established so they can maybe bud again from the stump. And also there is an interdependence on fungi and bacteria down among the root system that will break down dead bodies and then feed those nutrients back into the trees through the roots. So yeah, trees eat meat by getting help. That's a thing. And I don't mean in fantasy, I mean IRL. You can look it up. but you'll also probably get a bunch of really weird results because the internet is the internet. And leave safe search on. Let's put it that way.
They'll send thousands of their slaves and basic soldiers to death in order to
see. This is why I wanted, like, not for the clan rats. I probably wouldn't even bother buying them, but like for the big horde model over here, I've seen some people do that for Golden Demon, like the bell, the massive rat ogre in the background, the smaller rat ogre. Like, I'm not even sure that's a rat ogre. I don't even care. Like, look at some of these things. They're so all over the place. I do 3D printing. I get a ton of models I want all the time for a bunch of crazy stuff. I got into games because I wanted to just do things like this. Just don't need to paint that one. And just looking at this, all I can think is I would still buy this because these are such cool sculpts. Oh, that's cool. Oh, cool.
Slightly soften up the enemy defenses. As far as the Council of 13 that rules Skavendom is concerned, 1,000 slave rats in exchange for the enemy losing a couple rockets and cannonballs is a positive trade. This is before they start firing at you with magically powered Gatling guns, throwing poison gas at you, and lighting you on fire with magically powered flamethrowers. Every single one of those things has the potential to break and kill the operators because the magic rocks powering it are incredibly unstable, and it just doesn't matter to the Skaven. Other Skaven killed are other potential rivals killed, and everyone else they kill is one less obstacle to Skaven domination over the world. That magical substance they use to power their weapons is a rock called warpstone, by the way, and the Skaven covet it above all else.
Okay, this one I do know. This one I do know. It's basically crystallized chaos itself that they eat because it's fun, powerful stuff, and may or may not be illicit, at least for them. Everyone else is like, this is powerful. They're like, this is food and power.
They use it to power pretty much everything that isn't manually powered by treadmills of slave rats. Other uses for it include using it to boost their magical strength, boost their physical strength, as food, and as a cocaine equivalent. Everyone else that touches the stuff either mutates or dies on the spot, and for the Skaven it's nose candy. If they sound goofy, it's because they are, but consider what it's like on the other side of a Skaven invasion. You're walking down the street, things have been a bit rough with the goings-on in the town, but nothing that can't be explained by natural causes. Then all you hear is explosions, the sounds of the most horrifying mutated monstrosities ever conceived, and right as you turn the corner, all you see is dozens of beady red eyes staring at you with full intent to kill and eat you. And that's if you're lucky. On the other end of things, the Skaven are horrifying. There's a lot more about the Skaven I could say, but here's a quick
and he did, and I love those videos.
Easy way to know if you like them. If you despise everything about everyone around you, know for a fact you should be in charge of everyone because you're clearly right, and altruism makes you want to curl up and die, you'll like the Skaven. Or alternatively, if you want to rock up to a fantasy setting with machine guns, magical artillery, and nuclear bombs, they're for you too. And I believe that is every major fantasy faction, and a lot of the minor ones. If you're new to fantasy,
which one was the minor one? Oh, some of the human ones.
Primer. If you aren't, I hope something in here was funny. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members.
Dude, this is why I love Pancreas and stuff, because it's just, it's like when you finally get into a new game and it's like, oh, there's so much to do. And it's like, ooh, I can look at this, I can look at this. There's some cool models here, and like showing off the Skaven. It's like, oh god, I'm probably going to grab some. I can't right now because, you know, going full time might actually make that hard. But at the same time, I want to because look at that. Oh. This entire video is literally nothing but temptation. And I still love it. Basically what I'm saying is, if you guys haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. And if for any reason you know, if maybe like one specific model set has the best looking stuff, and if it happens to be Skaven, let me know because I want to see more of this, damn it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.